Hi there. I wanted to do a video to help you understand how to do the customer development report, in particular for the blockchain project, in that it's a little bit different than the video that I explained for the selling project. In reality, some of your reports will look almost exactly the same that students are doing for their selling project. You'll be able to do interviews. So you could do a project where you do 20 interviews and you report the results in a table in the same way, listing out your value propositions and your customer development hypotheses in the same exact way and report that. That's ideal. Ideally, I would like you to be doing interviews, but for some of your projects, some of these blockchain projects, it might be impossible to find the type of customers that this blockchain project benefits. So I give you an alternative, and I'll explain that here. So we're going to come here to the assignment page, the customer development report or alternative. You'll scroll down. You can see here that option 1 is the original version. You can watch those videos. I teach you how to do interviews, how to prepare for interviews, how to conduct the interviews, and then how to use the information that you got the interviews to code those interviews into passes and fails, and then to put those in a table. So you're going to use those same tools for the blockchain alternative. If you do interviews, it'll be exactly the same. If you have any questions, you can turn to me. Or if you're going to be gathering data from online because you can't find people that fit the customer segments of your blockchain, you're going to be doing something different, which I'll explain here. So that was option 1. Now, if you're doing the alternative for the blockchain, this is option 2. You can click on here for the rubric. Okay, so here are the rubrics for all of the blockchain alternative projects. So you just scroll down. You've already done the BMC and get out of the building plan. And now your next rubric here is the customer development report. Okay. So again, I just want to emphasize I would prefer if you did interviews and reported exactly the same as what I explained in the regular project. So see the other video for that. If you can do interviews, if you can find the type of people, the customers of this blockchain project, you should do interviews. I will give you an example here in a few minutes based on XRP or Ripple. And the customers that they serve are people that need bank transfers, particularly across borders. So like people that have family in other countries or that do business in other countries. So that would be totally possible to find people that have family back home in their home country and to do interviews with those people, trying to understand, are the problems that this blockchain project solves, are they real problems? So you could totally do interviews. I think that's better if you do interviews, and I'm showing you an alternative if you couldn't do that. Okay. So there's a 4-part structure here. You can see first you're going to explain your hypotheses. This is the bet with yourself about the project. You could say, if you're doing interviews, at least X percentage, let's say at least 50% of the interviews will be a pass for the blockchain project's value proposition number 1, or at least 60% of the sources that I find online will have information that will be coded as a pass for blockchain's value proposition 1. And then you're going to repeat that for each value proposition. So if you have 2 value propositions, you're going to have 2 hypotheses. If you're going to do interviews and online sources, you could do that. You're just going to have to kind of combine those together. So that's the first section. Explain what you think. What do you think you're going to find? Then you're going to go out and try to do that. What's your method? You're going to explain who you interviewed, if you interviewed people, detail the time spent. If you don't think that you can find exact people, then you're going to say what sources did you gather and why those. So you're going to explain how you got to the source you're using, and those are online sources typically. Then you're going to show a page of photos or screenshots of what you did. And the idea here is assume, because I have students that make up stuff like they actually did work that they didn't do. So assume that I am worried about that and prove to me that you actually did this work, that you did a really good job. They can be little screenshots. Just show me a bunch of them. That's better than just showing me one screenshot of one Google search. That's not very convincing. So you're trying to convince me. The onus is on you. So you can give 2 examples of questions you asked people if you're doing interviews, or you can give 2 ways that you searched online sources. So like, what were your search terms? Just tell me your search terms. Give 2 most insightful responses if you're having interviews, or quotations if you're using online sources. So that's your customer development process. So you explain, this is the method that I used, this is what I did, and you're trying to prove to me you actually did it. And then the next one is customer development results. So you're reporting the results of that, and you should have a table, and there should be numbers and percentages so that you can test your hypotheses that you gave before. And then finally, what insights did you learn about the business model? Okay, so here is the rubric that I use. This is a low stakes assignment. Is just to try to get you opportunity to learn about this. Each section you get points for. Hypotheses, did you state them? Was it clear? The process, did you explain it? Did you quantify how many interviews or online sources you use? Was it clear how you coded them, pass or fail? Did you have at least 20? And was it convincing that you actually did the work? Then the next section is results. Did you put a table in where the numbers, did they add up? Did they make sense? Do I believe that you actually did that? And then finally, insights. So I want you to use those numbers from the table to actually gain insights about the business model, whether it's feasible and so forth. And then finally, it should be a report that's like easy to skim. I can look at it and tell, okay, there's the 4 sections. They did this, this, and this, and it looks good, right? So up here, I give you a template example. So I'm going to go there. And this is an example of what the report would look like, okay? Now, this is not based on interviews. I've given you other examples for interviews. So if you can do interviews, do interviews. That's better. And just follow the format for the interview report. If you can't find people to do interviews, this is what you should do. Okay, so again, here I have the hypothesis section. I say I think 50% of these sources that I look for will mention the cost is a problem, and 60% will mention speed. I just came up with those numbers. I just think, well, that makes sense, right? That's just your hypothesis section, section 1. Section 2 is what did I actually do? So I went to 20 online sources. It took me about 12 hours in total to do this. These are the search terms that I used. And then I gave some quotes. Now here, I put the quotes in the appendix because I thought that fit better. So down here, I've got a bunch of quotes. And I showed how each of those quotes corresponded to a pass. So this first source, I said this source indicates that there really is a problem, which means that it's a pass. There really is a problem with cost. And I put the article mentions, in quotations, remittances remain expensive to send, right? So that to me is a pass. It is a problem that they're expensive. But value proposition 2 is related to speed, and there was no mention of speed in there, so I put that as a fail. So I'm conservative. I'm saying, well, they didn't mention it, so I'll say it's not really an issue if they didn't mention it in this article. So I did that for the ones that were most insightful. I give a bunch of quotes here. I include 20 sources, but I don't give quotes for all of them. You need to have at least for 8 some quotes. So it's convincing that I actually went to all these sources and I didn't just make up these numbers. That's what you got to think of. You want to prove to me. And if you go beyond 2 pages, that's fine. But you want to convince that you did what you did. Because I had so many notes here, I didn't provide screenshots, and that's fine if you don't have a screenshot. But if you have more notes to support the fact that you did the work. Okay, so that's what you did. And then summarizing the results. Okay, so I show 20 total sources. My first value proposition was cost reduction. 16 of them I rated as passes. So that's 80%. Value proposition 2, transfer speed increase. 14 I rated as passes, so that's 70%. Okay, so that's my results. I could have probably explained a little bit more here. You probably should do that if it's not totally clear what's happening in the table. If you can break down the data any more detail, that's better. In the interviews, you can do a better job of breaking down the data because you can classify people in categories and then compare those different categories. If you can do that with the sources, you'll get a better grade, right? The more you use data in a convincing way, the better. And then finally, the insights. What did you learn? So, well, 80% was over 50%. So it seems like I was on the right track. And the 70% is over the 60% hypothesis. So it seems like I'm on the right track. They're both important. Cost comes up more often. Part of the problem is maybe the way I was finding the sources. So one thing that you should maybe indicate up here in your process, you don't want to kind of put your thumb on the scale to show that you're right by only looking at sources that are going to tell you that you're right. So you might want to indicate, I looked at sources with these two different search terms, one that would maybe lean positive and one that would maybe lean negative, so that you can get a balanced view of your informants. One thing that I found that was interesting was that it seemed like there was a bigger problem in what are called slow-to-pay countries. So that's something that I hadn't really thought of before. It's like a little bit narrower. Like this is a particular problem in slow-to-pay countries, so maybe I could narrow the customer segments a little bit more by customers in slow-to-pay countries or those trying to interact with slow-to-pay countries. And then I listed all my sources. I gave really good notes on at least 8 of them, and then links to the other 12. If you can give more, that's better. I really don't want like 5 pages. You can go 3 pages. I don't really want you to go more than 3. Hope it's useful for you. I hope this is an interesting project for you, and you learn about this and kind of develop kind of the ability to turn qualitative information, what people are writing, into a consensus view with data that you can quantify. And not everybody has to agree, but you can see patterns if you quantify it.